live. Hamadaki Nick Tilson, Amachi Chantel Ashten Ape Chuzapolo. This is Nick Tilson, and we are here with Rachel and Vinny Dion. We're in South Minneapolis on Franklin Ave in the Native American Cultural Corridor. We're actually inside of Pow Wow Grounds, which is a coffee shop, a community center. I think this part of it is actually NACD, which is the Native American Community Development Institute that does awesome work here in the community. And I'll let Rachel and Vinny give them an opportunity to introduce themselves.
Rachel Dion Thunder. Hello, my name is Rachel. I'm Plains Cree, Nihio Nihiwak, Big Stone Cree Nation, Treaty 8. Community member here in South Minneapolis, Vice President of the Indigenous Protector Movement and second generation American Indian Movement.
Bonjour, friends and relatives. Jean Nagijik, Indigenous Cause, Nagizi and Odem, Vin Dion, enrolled member, Turtle Mountain, Bandit Chippewa, but I'm a lifelong member here in South Minneapolis, here at Little Earth. Now I reside on Franklin Avenue, not too far from here. Lifelong community member.
So we just wanted to give an update to the people, to the Oyate out there, what's going on the ground here in Minneapolis. There's a lot of misinformation that is happening. It's the way the world works this way, these days. But so we wanted to give an update to the people of what's going on the ground here. As people know, it's been a week and a half or so since the murder of Renee Good, who was on simple patrol here in Portland Avenue, whose life was taken by an ICE agent. But organizing has been happening here against ICE since June, and patrols really ramped up when ICE, did their Operation Metro. What is it?
Metro Surge.
Metro Surge, where we're seeing this administration try to make an example out of this place here, and so. Do you want to touch on a little bit some of the patrols and some of the things that have been going on in the city in the lead up to this? Because some people think this started, 10 days ago, but it's been going on since November, Yeah,
I can touch upon that. I guess I want to start with the narrative that was being spun to even get them here in the first place, right? The narrative being spun, and they were getting even some of our community members behind on this narrative, where we're here for fraud, we're here to take out the big time drug dealers, the cartel members, things like that, right? They spun that narrative, and even a lot of the people around here felt that way. Like, okay, cool, let them in, let them come do their thing. But when they got here, it was a whole different their actions spoke way different than what their words were. They came here and they started terrorizing regular, everyday community members. I think of let me just speak up on right here. This is the heart of the Native community, but we also share our community with more recent immigrant community, right? So it's a hot spot for them to come to. And when they got here, they started really targeting everybody, including the Native peoples. And a lot of our Native peoples were living scared, before we even activated. I was going to community meetings here in South Minneapolis, and I was hearing the pleas from our elders. I was hearing the pleas from our parents, our mothers, our children. Kids don't want to go to school right now. We're living in really, really rough times, and that's what made us activate. We have to put it into action. That's who we are as protectors and community members. So that's really what got us going. I couldn't even tell you how many days we've been out here, but we're here for the people. Rachel could probably speak more about the different patrols and things like that we have going on.
Yeah, I can do that. So, Nick mentioned that ICE was first here back in June of 2025. There was a joint federal task force that executed a warrant raid on Lake in Bloomington here in South Minneapolis. And I do believe that that raid was valid, but what happened was ICE agents piggybacked onto that raid. Raids happen here on a regular basis in Minneapolis, but ICE is not present at those raids. And so that initial contact from ICE through that Joint Federal Task Force was them first testing the waters here of community response, of how Minneapolis as a city would respond to their presence. And, ever since then, we have seen this escalation to where now we're in this full occupation of the Twin Cities and Minneapolis by ICE as an arm of the United States federal government. And so what we have seen and done and plugged into is a broader, really just community members being commuters, being observers, just watching out for each other, watching out for your neighbors. And that's really what we're doing here on Franklin Avenue, based here out of Pow Wow Grounds, and All My Relations Gallery is serving as a community hub, for people to come here to be in ceremony, to get supplies, water, snacks, diapers, for their babies, and to have a central hub for active patrols that are going on. And I want to be very clear when I say patrol, because the narrative that the United States federal government always tries to spin, right? And we've seen this historically, that first we were savages, then we were radicals, and then we were terrorists, and that they try to paint us as the violent ones, when in fact they're the ones that perpetrate the violence. They're the ones that murdered Renee Nicole Good. They're the ones that shot an immigrant neighbor on Northside the other night. They're the ones that deploy the tear gas and the rubber bullets and inflict harm and fear into our communities. And so what we are doing is community care in response to that violence. And so I want to be very clear about what we're doing on these patrols, that we have our legal constitutional rights, and what we saw as a federal judge here backing those rights yesterday in Minnesota, that we have the right to legally observe. We have the right to legally record these active ICE abductions. We have the right to safely follow ICE vehicles and to report to community members where ICE is known to be at in our community. We have the right to blow whistles. We have the right to, have our freedom of speech to actively speak to those agents during these abductions and during protests. And so that is what we are doing when we are on patrol. We're acting as the eyes and the ears, boots on the ground for community, to keep not only our community safe, but all of the surrounding community here as well.
Yeah, and I want to speak to everybody a little bit about like why Indian Collective is here, like why it was important for us to respond here. One is, I always say that like there would never be an Indian Collective if there wasn't an American Indian movement. Mm-hmm. Indian Collective grew out of the American Indian movement, and it grew out of the broader movement, and we helped catalyze the land back movement. As a movement infrastructure organization, where we're at right now physically is where the roots of the American Indian movement was first getting started. And they were doing community patrols, policing the police, protecting our own communities through community care. And we have comrades that we've been in relationship with many years, like myself, family was from this area on my father's side of the family, and we have roots that go back to the origins of the American Indian movement in this community. And also we have comrades with many shields, with Indigenous Protector Movement, with many of the organizations here in town. And so, we wanted to show up and deploy some of our communities and people here. We also have folks who are members of Indian Collective that live in this community, that are from here. And so we have been showing up just to assist in patrols, putting work in, Some of the stuff that we believe is that when you show up in community, it's important for you just to show up and put labor in. Show up with supplies, put labor in, do patrols, look out for community, build relationships with people, let them know that you're here. We've also deployed our creative resistance team here, who has been helping with art and art builds. We've been hosting Know Your Rights trainings here. These Know Your Rights trainings are about so people are informed of what their rights are, because there's so many people who are activated in this moment, and it's an opportunity to build their capacity. And the more that people know their rights, the safer community is. When we first got here, we brought Orville Lookinghorse, the keeper of the White Buffalo Calf Pipe, to come here and start with prayer. And we did that on the fourth day that Renee, from the 4 days since Renee had lost her life. And having that spiritual component has been important. But for us, it's really about uplifting the local community here. It's about us investing into the self-determination of you all that are here all the time. I also want to give shout outs to MUD, the Metropolitan Urban Indian Directors here. They welcomed us into this community on some threads. They're very well organized. They have a strong relationship with the city and helping to liaison between the Native community, and they're doing so much awesome work here in the community too. So shout outs to MUD and the Metropolitan Urban Indian Directors group. And for folks that are at home throughout Indian country, and especially for tribal leaders, I just want to speak for a minute to our leaders. We've had some of our tribal government leaders come out here, from the Wallace Sioux Tribe, Rosebud Sioux Tribe, Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe, MHA, Sisseton, Prairie Island, and then of course the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, and the surrounding tribes. Ho-Chunks have come out here and tried to deploy their resources here. The Indian Center right down the road here, if you go in there, it looks like you can go get your tribal ID. In fact, I'm from Pine Ridge, and I got my new tribal ID today, right here from relatives from back in Pine Ridge. And it's legit, actually. You get like a printed out new ID. That's important because at the same time, when ICE tries to harass people, tribal IDs are key to say I'm not only a citizen of the United States, I'm also a member of a federally recognized tribe. So there's multiple things happening on the ground here. And I think for folks that are viewing back home, sometimes people are thinking it's just Armageddon. But at the same time, what you're seeing is community. You're actually seeing so much work happen out of love here and people looking out for one another. And the fact that grassroots, traditional people can work with our allies and immigrants and non-native people, and we're literally chasing off armed ICE agents with whistles and prayers is pretty powerful. And that's happening. And people aren't really realizing that that's happening at scale. The resistance is strong here, and people are organized and actively saving people's lives from being abducted. And it's happening on a community and neighborhood level throughout the whole city, all the way from the north to the south to the east to the west. And it's pretty powerful to watch and be a part of and contribute to it. What we really do need, and this is a message to our tribal leaders, our members of our federally recognized tribes, we need you to issue bans on ICE. We need you to exercise tribal sovereignty, to issue bans on ICE. So tribal members throughout the nation, hit up your tribal council leaders, your tribal chairs, your tribal presidents. Ask them to issue bans on ICE, not only in the boundaries of the reservation, but in our treaty territories, yes, which includes places like the city of Minneapolis. This is included in the Osheti-Shawkomi. So put that language into those resolutions, issue bans on ICE. We have to flex our tribal sovereignty. We can't just stay home. We can't just stay behind it. We have to strengthen it, because when our communities are out here, and there's hundreds of tribes that are represented out here in this community, and when we're out here, having our tribes back, what's happening here is really fundamentally important. It helps protect us when tribes say they want, ICE out of our treaty territories. So just wanted to say those things, and maybe you can speak to a little bit how people can help on the ground here, like where can people donate, send resources to, speak to some of that.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to some of that, and I do want to speak directly to the people across Turtle Island that are watching this, and say that fear spreads faster than information. And so when you are seeing posts that are scary, or you see someone posting information, really vet that information, fact check that information, ask yourself, why would this person be posting that? What is the narrative that we are controlling, right? Because if we don't tell our story, they're going to tell it for us. And so be very, very conscious about the information that you are sharing, not only in rapid response here, but across the country and across Turtle Island. So really do that work, because I mean, it is a scary moment that we are in, but there's a lot of misinformation out there, and that feeds into their propaganda and their misinformation campaigns. I also did want to touch a little bit on like what you were saying, Nick, you know, that you guys came here from South Dakota. You know, historically here in Minneapolis, like American Indian Movement with American Indian Movement South Dakota have had like a really strong working relationship, and we're standing on the shoulders of giants. You know, this year is the 4th year for Clyde Belcourt since he passed here in Minneapolis. You know, I think of others like Frank Perro. I think of Hermes, you know, because I know that all those brothers and those grandpas would be here with us, and they are, right? And I want to remind people too that, you know, that even though this occupation by the federal government is a new moment happening right now, that this is a repeated pattern, that this is something that we have been dealing with multi-generationally, that as Native people, as Indigenous people, we have always been activated to protect and care for our communities from the United States federal government and other colonial governments through South America. So I did want to say that. And for everybody that's wanting to plug in and help support what's going on here, boots on the ground, we are actively taking physical donations here at Pow Wow Grounds. So things that would support active observers, safety gear to protect them from these less lethal weapons and lethal weapons that ICE are using against United States citizens and residents of Minnesota and Minneapolis. Think goggles, safety masks, boot treads, saline rinses, all of those things to help protect and care for our people and our boots on the ground folks. But we're also accepting donations that get dispersed into community. You know, there's a lot of community members that are staying home, that don't feel safe going to the grocery store, that don't feel safe taking their kids to and from school. And so, you know, food, non-perishable food and water that we can then deliver to those families is very important. And then we do accept monetary donations that goes directly to Many Shields and into our action as Indigenous Protector Movement. And you can donate directly on our website, our 501c3 website, indigenousprotectormovement.com, and there's a donate tab right on there.
I think putting this putting some of this into context of like what's happening like in the future of the democracy in America, a lot of it's boiling down to what's happening right here. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're testing what they can do, and they're trying to. I mean, when the president is threatening to, you know, ignite the Insurrection Act, which means that those are efforts. You know, the ICE being here is a precursor to them making the state of Minnesota and the city of Minneapolis a militarized zone where the feds have, you know, full authority here. And you know, the Department of Justice has launched an investigation into Becca Good, who is the wife of Renee Good. because this administration intends to try to bring domestic terrorism charges against Becca Good, who is the wife of Renee Good. And imagine that the grieving that Becca Good is actually going through right now, and now it's having to think about protecting themselves against this legal system that wishes to use them as a political target. And this is all part of the effort to create the narrative that there's somehow domestic terrorists here in this community, when really they're just doing community care. And this is something for people all across America to watch in this moment. Right now, this is happening on the streets here in Minneapolis, but it can happen in any one of your communities. And it is imperative that we do not allow the federal government to come in and to take over cities. And it will take people to stay organized and to keep pushing ICE out of the communities. Because the Minneapolis Police Department may be outnumbered by ICE here in the community, but the people outnumber the police department and outnumber ICE in this community. And you're seeing that happen here. And people aren't being violent. People are doing what they're doing out of love and protection, and blowing whistles, carrying sage, carrying prayers, observing what's happening. And that's how you protect communities. And you're having it cross neighborhoods, cross racial lines, cross class. And that's what it's going to take for people to resist and to defect against the federal government that's pushing this in our communities. And so I would think that there's many lessons happening right here on the streets of Minneapolis that cities and towns and tribes and states and communities across America should be paying attention to. And I think that as we are here in this moment, the very future of the democracy is at stake here. Meaning that if we can allow authoritarianism to get to the point where they can just call in the military and assume control of entire cities and use tax-paying dollars to kidnap people illegally and incarcerate them and violate all their rights, then they're coming for everybody's rights. And that's why this is imperative in this moment. We can't just be thinking about responding to this one political moment when actually it's a political agenda. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take mass non-cooperation and people not cooperating and not allowing the federal agencies to come in here and control our communities and our people. And so I encourage people to get their tribes, to get their local county governments, state governments, to pass bans on ICE, not allowing ban on ICE in their communities, and push your elected leaders to not only think about banning ICE, but what are you going to do to enforce the bans on ICE? Because they're going to test the waters. They're going to test the absolute extreme, waters legally and on the enforcement side. And I think that it's important for politically and elected leaders to stand with the people and the communities and to not allow ICE and the police to criminalize us who are out here in the community. You got to stand with the people. And this is a time for unity. And why you've been elected into office, why you are in the position which you occupy, that very institution of democracy is at stake here. So your decisions that you make as elected leaders right now, and as political leaders and legal leaders, are some of the most important decisions that you will ever make. Because it's not only a political position, you're talking about a future of the system in place at all. And so that's the encouragement that I make. I think that the people on the ground have been awesome at extending hands for collaboration, because we know that our struggles are all bound up with one another. So I want to give Vinny a chance to talk about some of the young people, young men and women who are part of Many Shields, so that people, it's very well known in the city, but people outside of the city kind of know what Many Shields is and what they're doing here in the community too.
Yeah. Just a little bit about our Mini Shield Society. It was just a group of men that started out as a talking circle, a support group for a lot of our guys that we have in Mini Shields. There are guys coming home from active addiction, coming home from jail, treatment, those types of things, as well as other community members, right? But with Mini Shields, what we're able to do, we're able to organize our men in the community. And with that, we're able to grow and strengthen the men within the community. And so from there, we just started doing volunteer stuff, volunteer security, patrols, those types of things. And then it just started getting bigger and started growing more legs to it. And then just a lot, it gives the men in our community purpose. They get to be a part of something positive. That's what I get out of it, I just want to be a part of something positive. I look back to like all the mistakes we've made in our lives, doing bad things. Now understanding we can learn from them things and we can grow from them things. And that's really what our group was like built upon, is just wanting to learn and grow, having that integrity to do better, And so with that, we just started patrolling and my wife started the Women's Warrior Society group there, and we worked together, for things. And this is one of the things that, when the community calls, we answer that call, and that's where I find ourselves at right now with our group, And it's been a lot of hard work, no doubt, and just that's why I appreciate you coming in, Nick. I appreciate Indian Collective, I appreciate Wambiska, Wisconsin AIM, our local AIM chapter we have out here. Everyone just coming together, that's community. That's when we all come together. It's like I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Like to know other people have your back. You have their support. And this is what we do. We show up for one another, and just a great feeling. And I guess I'll close out with that.
Yeah, and in closing, I wanted to speak to, as the American Indian movement is a movement. Mm-hmm. It's a movement that runs through our blood. It's a movement that carries that warrior spirit and spirit of resistance. And we have these different organizations at different times that we have created to meet the needs of community and to support the movement. But the movement will always be the movement. Mm-hmm. And the movement shows up when it's times like this. Mm-hmm. And that's why for me, like I've always repped the American Indian movement. I started Indian Collective, but I repped the American Indian movement too. And that things like Indian Collective help support the American Indian movement, help support the things that are happening in community. And that's why there's these different, identities. And so I also just want to give shout outs to to the OGs who've been around here. Of the American Indian movement, because they instilled that into us. And so we're out here doing the work that we're doing because we love our people, because we have our identity, because we know how to pray, because we know who we are, and that we have both the inherent right, but also we have the inherent responsibility to looking out for our people. And that is instilled to us because the generation before fought the battles that they fought and created the foundation that we stand on today. So I always thank them for instilling that into us, and that's why we carry this struggle on. I also want to give big shout outs to the Somalian, immigrant community here, who has been coming, here since the 1990s, and in the past, many tensions have been, as things go. But there's enough coordination happening right now where communities are looking out for one another and organizing, and communities saying, hey, I'm organizing in this community. If you guys go down this area, it's good. It's good relatives, being good relations. Also the allies that are non-native from, that are here in the city of Minneapolis. I would say that this place is probably some of the strongest allies that I have witnessed across this nation. Because one, they have an analysis, they know they're on Indian land here, but then they show up and risk their freedoms, risk their lives to look out for one another and look out for the people. And we've seen that today with the counter protests. We've seen that in what was going on throughout the city, and that's a continued thing here. So I want to thank all of the allies throughout the movement and throughout the city too, because we know that you care about your communities as much as you care about ours, and we want to have that reciprocity too. Mm-hmm. And so just want to say all that, and I know that all the spiritual people, there's a lot of the spiritual people that run ceremonies, and maybe they're not always the most politically active, but they're often standing with us in ceremonies. There's people having ceremonies on Prairie Island here all tonight. People hitting me up saying, "Hey, we're having, I can't be out there, but we're having ceremony." That matters to us. Mm-hmm. And as being a ceremonial person, I just want to say that all those ceremonies and those prayers matter, and we're also praying on the ground while we're doing here. So please keep supporting in that way. We can feel the ancestors with us out here. We don't feel alone out here, because of all that too. So I don't know if you have any last things you want to share, Rachel.
Yeah, I can share a couple of things. American Indian movement is a way of life. It's just a way of being. It's first and foremost a spiritual movement, and there are these very rapid response things happening, but at the same time, this is a spiritual war that is happening at the same time. And so I wanted to touch on that and the importance of that, and the importance of prayer and of staying grounded and staying true to our traditions and protocols while adapting to these times that we are in, right? And staying flexible and fluid in our response. I think that I know that the power that we have as a people is unstoppable. What we have seen repeatedly successful in stopping abductions by ICE is when the people are there in their power. The ICE agents will go back to their vehicles and they feel that power of the people. And so I want to speak directly to our people that now is the time, as Native people, as Indigenous people of North and South America, to unite, to work on ourselves and heal from the historical trauma that we have endured for generations, and to move into a better future together. Because when we all unite and are healed from that trauma, we will be completely unstoppable. And we are living in that moment, that time of unification of our people, and we will be successful, and we will be here for generations to come. And so now is the time for our communities, our tribes, and people all across Turtle Island to start organizing, to get their structured networks together. You don't have to come here to Minneapolis. There's organizing and building that you can do in your communities to prepare your communities in case this happens there as well, and take lessons from what is happening here on the ground to implement those strategies into your communities and what works for your communities and your neighbors. And so we are living in a moment where things are scary, but we are also living in a moment of opportunity to build strategy and to build strength and to build unification across all Indigenous people of the Americas. And so what we are doing now is a continuation of the American Indian movement. What we are doing now is a continuation of the resistance of our ancestors. And what we are doing now is bringing our people forward into the future. And that's what we're going to keep doing here. And we ask everybody else to do that as well across all of your communities.
Sounds good. Anything else? Is there any questions that have come up on the live feed that we want to answer at this time? I just want to also, for the folks watching, I want to give you an opportunity to look at Brother Vinny's shirt here.
Yeah.
If you haven't commented about it in the comments about it, it's been there. You know, showing mad love to his wife, repping hard. You know, I'll say that too. There's like in struggle, there's like lots of love, lots of humor, lots of good energy here too. It's not just like, you know, I think people are like so like, and rightfully so. A lot of people are scared, but like when people you know. On social media or anything, but in Powderhorn Park they had like the big sleigh where they build big sculptures out of snowmen and then push them down the hill. That was today. I missed it because we were patrolling, but I know that was going on. It's a good time. People are still being in joy at the same time that we're in the struggle. Yeah. And you still see that people are here living their lives too. Yeah. You know, and so just wanted folks back home and online for folks to know that too. The other thing I would say is like another strategy is, you know, as people rise up in other cities and other towns and other places, the idea is to like spread out ICE. Mm-hmm. So like when people are saying, hey, I'm not going to make it to Minneapolis, I'm not going to make it to these places. It's important for people to get organized. Mm-hmm. I know that we have a big base in Rapid City, South Dakota, where Indian Collective is founded from. ICE is there. It became. You might have seen the post online, but it's become aware to us that the Alex Johnson in downtown Rapid City is one of the places where ICE agents are checking into. We don't know how many have checked in there, but it's important for people to get organized there in Rapid City too. And organized and having patrols and looking out for community and community care. And so I think that fundamentally important.
Do you want to speak a little bit on the significance of Fort Snelling?
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Question?
There's a question about businesses that have their doors locked, and if people are being screened, and if people can speak to what's going on there.
With the businesses locking their doors? So that's just a security protocol because ICE does not have permission to enter properties without a signed judicial warrant. And so sometimes they'll try to show a warrant, but it's an administrative warrant. So it has to be a judicial warrant signed by a judge. And if these businesses don't have their doors locked, ICE will just go in and target, our immigrant relatives, and really they're opportunists. They're really targeting just anybody of color, and then they verify citizenship in the aftermath of the trauma and the abduction. And so that's why businesses are locking their doors, and a lot of businesses will have a sign, just knock on the door, they'll let you in if you're not ICE.
And we still maybe, and just a reminder, like for those businesses, we actually, like in this moment, we still need people to come out. Yes. And spend money at those businesses. Like go to the corner stores. Don't go to the big box stores. Like go to the stores in town and go to the restaurants in town. Even if you don't feel comfortable staying, get your food to go there. But go there and spend your money. If you see a sign, just say, hey, I'm here to buy something from the store. It helps strengthen the local economy and helps strengthen families. And then they in turn put those resources right back out into the community too. And so it's part of a way that people can like support and take care of each other in this moment too. We wanted for people to understand like how incredibly offensive and violent it is for ICE, DHS, and the federal government. How terrible it is for them to be using Fort Snelling and the Whipple building in particular for ICE headquarters. Right below Fort Snelling is a sacred place called Badote, which is, Badote is where the Minnesota and Mississippi rivers converge, and it is part of the origin story of the Dakota people, part of the creation stories. For Lakota people, it's Wind Cave. For Dakota, it's Badote. And that has been a focal point for the violence and oppression that has been waged on the Dakota people from that exact location. It's the location of the Dakota concentration camp. It's the place in which the United States government has waged war against Dakota people, that led to, the Dakota 38 plus 2, that led, to the efforts to try to put out the Dakota Uprising, and they waged wars against their people from that fort. That is what happened historically. And now ICE is using that same fort at Fort Snelling to wage war against all of the people in this community, all people of color, all people that are of brown skin. And it's important for the people to understand that significance. They're using a United States military federal property and fort to wage war against poor people in this country right now in 2026. And we have seen this before. I mean, as Indian people, we have said, oh, hey, we've survived this onslaught of oppression and struggle before, and we've experienced this before. They're using the exact same blueprint. And, quite frankly, the state of Minnesota is being treated how Indian people have always been treated by the colonial governments here. You're watching the federal government not care about the sovereignty of the state of Minnesota or the city of Minneapolis or the people that have been here. And as Indian people, we can tell you firsthand what that's like, what that's been like. And that if you don't protect that sovereignty that you have, they're going to come for all of it. Authoritarianism will gobble up the little sovereignty that the state of Minnesota has. And they're using that same blueprint. You have to understand how racially charged it is for the federal government to use Fort Snelling as a place for their operations to kidnap brown people in this community on our land. And so part of what we're doing here is to remind people that this is still native land. This is still Dakota land. This is the unceded land of the Dakota people. And those rights were never given up. The rights that we have through our treaties are inherent. So we have every right to stop ICE agents from illegally operating on our land here and illegally operating in our communities here. And we need our political leaders, our tribally elected leaders. We need the Shakopee Minnewakantu community. We need the Prairie Island Indian community, the Upper Sioux community, the Lower Sioux community, the Minnesota Chippewa tribes. We need tribal governments to stand with the grassroots people in this. And that is a direct ask. We are asking that because your tribal members are out here in this community. And many of you are out here too. And many of you are making efforts to be out here. But we need people not to just hunker down in their communities. We need people to exercise their tribal sovereignty because it will protect our people. Because the people are going to be out here regardless of what tribal governments, tribal nations do or don't do. But we need them to stand with us out here. Mm-hmm. And because we're stronger together. And there's an opportunity to do that here as a people. Because if ICE and the federal government can come in here and violate the rights of everyday people here and kidnap people, you think your tribal sovereignty is protected in your communities? Hell no, they'll come right in there. They don't care about the sovereignty. So these are things I want us to think about, and I really want the state of Minnesota and the political leaders to think about what is actually at stake in this moment, because they will come and are coming for the sovereignty of everybody. And that's why the resistance is so important. That's why us organizing, is so important. Don't other the grassroots organizers. Don't other us as if what we're doing is not valuable. We're saving lives out here. We're chasing off ICE agents with whistles and prayers, and that's happening all the time here. And so stand with us. Pass these resolutions. Issue bans on ICE. Let's evict ICE from our territory and protect our people.
Yeah. Also, just speaking to, when you talk about, the United States having a larger strategy here, it's important to remember that as tribal nations, even just on our lands, how many natural resources are there that the United States government would love to be able to take advantage of. And even here in Minnesota alone, this is the largest, the area with the largest amount of fresh water. And we look at these big AI data centers and, ice detention facilities that are looking to physically be on the land, and the United States government is definitely looking at opportunities to build things like that, to extract resources, to build pipelines, to dig for uranium, to dig for nickel, to dig for copper on reservation lands. And so there is more at play here than just an ICE occupation.
Anything else? We want to touch on anything else? Any questions in there that we want to get to? Are we good to go? Okay. Thank you everybody out there for all your support. We'll continue to be on the ground here and give you updates and reports. Send your prayers and resources and support what's happening here on the ground.
Yeah.
Hajatu.